Produced by Dane Calloway and Tanisha Calloway. Watch this brand new documentary, Mother Rosa, right now at DaneMakeYouThink.com.
I always thought that the Republican Party was the creators of the Ku Klux Klan, and it was the Democrats. Somebody had to check me at the door. I didn't know it. I did not know it. That's how bad I was reluctant to vote for Republicans, because I thought that the Republican, because of based on what we were being taught, we thought that they were the KKK party. Come to find out, it was the Democrats that started the Ku Klux Klan, and still to this day, they are the Ku Klux Klan. I did not know it, and I'm like, oh my goodness.
Was that a narrative back then? Were they trying to tell people back then that the Ku Klux Klan was started by the Republicans?
This is what we were taught, that they were the KKK. That's what we were taught. And that's what I always had in my head. This is why so many brown people in our community have been reluctant to vote for the Republican Party, because they were indoctrinated to believe that the Republican Party is the Ku Klux Klan and they're racist people and this. And I'm like, I sat down and ate lunch and dinner in events with Republicans, and they didn't seem to be racist to me. So
that's an interesting take. I never knew that was the narrative that was going around back then.
That was the narrative that I was brought up with in my community, all the way up until Trump came in office. And
what?
Yes, yes. Because why you think I would desperately fight? I would desperately fight for a Democrat to get in office, because in my mindset, I was like, we can't let them in. They want to destroy our people. They don't like brown people. They don't like us Indian Negroes. They don't like us. They don't like us. So we can't get them in. That was in my head until I woke up and smelled the coffee and said, well, I'll be damned.
Yeah, that was I'm gonna tell my wife we're gonna have to do something more on that again. I thought, to be honest with you, that's my first time ever hearing that, where you guys were taught that and they kill people of the Republican Party.
This is what we were taught here in the North. And I was raised, and I'm not saying that white Democrats came around to teach us this. It was
but that was
Democrats,
just the word that got around.
Yeah, no, there were literally people that looked like me, like the people like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, all people like that.
Campaigning this.
Yes.
Okay.
And they would try to pull my grandmother out the house to make sure she voted Democratic. These are what these campaigning people do. And at that time, I was too little. This was in the 70s, and I remember this when they would come around in our community. And the whole time, I thought that the Republicans were the ones that burnt our family off our farm in the South. I really did. Wow. This is what I thought. But in fact, it was Democrats in hooded sheets that came and burnt our family's home in South Carolina. And they had to come to Connecticut from South Carolina in 1929.
Relax
and
take notes.
We've been here ever since. I thought those were Republicans. This is what they teach here, that when you see the Ku Klux Klan, that these are Republicans in sheets. And I'm like, well, why are their hands black?
Man,
in the sheets.
That's something I'm gonna look into that. I'm gonna investigate that, because I never knew that you guys were taught that it was the Republican Party. Let me ask you this. Did that rumor start around your college days, or were you in school, like you were in public schools at that time?
No, as a little girl in the 70s in elementary school, they would tell that to my grandmother that she needs to come out and vote. And we'll drive you to the polls if you need a ride. And this is what they did in our communities. We'll drive you gotta vote. They would people would donate their cars and be transportation people to drive the elderly to the polls and bring them back home during election time. And now I'm an adult And I have my colleagues who I'm campaigning with telling me that I must vote Democrat because the Republicans get in, they're going to take everything away from you people.
Let me ask you this. So you guys never saw the cards that the Democrats created in order to instruct the Democrats of a political state, of a particular state, to go handle that individual, whether if they were a Niji or not. Like, they were also killing white Republicans. As far as a list, they had cards that had a list of people in each state of who they wanted to come after.
No.
Okay.
We were blinded to all this. When I came out my mother's womb, a Democrat. That's how serious it was.
So y'all never heard about the deaths, like abrupt deaths of Republicans in your state, in South Carolina?
No. We were already in Connecticut by then. I was born in the late 60s, like 2 years before Martin Luther King was assassinated.
The Democrats of a particular state that were a part of the KKK were given flashcards to identify who the Republicans were that they thought would give them trouble. To get rid of them, though.
Never heard of it. Hey, Smoke. Hey, Darvis.
Oh, yeah. Those. In fact, the Library of Congress still have some of them. God damn. All the way up until the 70s, y'all didn't. No, you said you didn't know nothing about that until recently, until Trump started.
All the way. When Trump came in is when, let me tell you something.
Wow.
When Trump came in office, I began to see a different part of life, of opportunity. I never saw it under the Democratic Party.
Wow.
I began to learn that I could do things that I thought that I was not privy to do, like start my own business.
I knew it was more to it. And of course, we're still unraveling some things, but that, I never would have thought that you guys were being taught that was the Republicans that started the KKK.
Yes, that's what we were taught. And when the Republicans
were being killed.
That's what we were being taught.
They were targeting Republicans, hands down. Like, I could start naming people.
We were taught that the Republicans did not like Black people and that we should never vote for them because they're going to take away everything that all the programs the Democratic created for poor people. And it actually happened the opposite way. That was, that's a strategic tactic that they did, in order for people to lose their farms, lose their land. The Democrats, though, they said the Republicans did that to us. They had a hold on the
people at that time, especially, our communities. That's horrible. I didn't know that, though. That's a first for me. I didn't hear that.
We were taught that the Republicans made all the Jim Crow laws, everything was the Republicans. See, that's crazy. That's what we were taught. That's why we, as a people, were reluctant to vote for Republicans because they trained our minds to say, when they're telling you that they're going to you're going to be able to open up businesses, you're going to do this. We were trained to believe that they're not referring to us. They're only referring to white people.
Let me ask you this. Were you ever taught? Were you ever taught that that they were both the same at one point? That they were the Democrat-Republican Party?
No. Never.
Democratic Republican Party.
I only hear that currently, that they're two heads of the one snake, or however they use that terminology. But I said, well, I find that different because Trump said that he was going to come in and put the wall up to stop the invaders from coming in our country. And he did. And then when the Democrats came in, they took it back down. They stopped it. And I'm like, okay, now I'm learning. Now we're learning. It was just like it was a sin for us to speak against the Democratic Party.
They do try to claim that the parties basically switched at some point.
Yes, I remember that too.
Yeah, and that never made a whole lot of sense to me. But that's something that to this day, they try to make you think that if you go back and try to connect the dots, like, wait, at one point, weren't we fighting for the Confederates? Because I just came from a family reunion down in South Carolina. And when I was telling from people, which was a crazy thing that I found out about more land, like this really is unfolding. In Sumter, there's land to my family's name that we're not even doing anything with. But they try to, when I was telling people up north that I was going down there, they try to make it seem like, oh, you better be careful. They still hang Confederate flags and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, let me go down there and see it for myself because I had never been.
YouTube is the first place I ever seen people that look like me wave Confederate flags with the X. We always were taught that that's the bad flag and that flag represents killing us. Yeah. And I seen the gentleman when I didn't know who the guy was behind his avatar, he had a Confederate flag. And when he turned his camera on, he was a brown guy, Indian. And I'm like, oh my goodness, he has the evil flag. And he said, no, you need to learn about this flag. And he taught us it was our flag. I almost wanted to like cry because I'm like, oh my goodness, we have really been lied about our history. And then when you go look at the records.
It's always our flag. We fought and died for that flag on top of that. See, I think what it was what happened that they were trying to do away, what I mean by they is the nativists. They were trying to do away with their original tactic, which was to separate the people by way of what their beliefs were at that time. So they implemented a move that made it seem as if we weren't fighting on the side of the South. They were trying to make it seem like the North won, when come to find out, they compromised because the North didn't have that many people to beat the South during the Civil War. And if you think about that, this was right at the time when the Democrats separated from the Democratic Republican Party. Like they lasted until like the 1830s, like mid 1830s. If you look this up, look up Democratic Republican Party. That was
I remember reading about that.
That was the nativist group. And guess what their flag was? The same flag that the KKK's was originally. Like that's another thing. They associated the rebel flag or the Confederate flag with the KKK. And that wasn't true. Wow. That's a big ass lie. The flag that they were representing is the flag that they fly in today, which is the USA flag. It's up. Red, white, and blue. I'm talking about the the KKK and the Democratic Republican Party. If you look this up, that's their colors. That has not changed. And when I did my segment on the USA flag, I was showing everybody the original salute. Like, don't you know how we thinking that we supposed to put, our hand, tight together, crossing it above our eyebrow on the right and salute the flag and you pledge allegiance to that flag? But prior to that, it was the Nazi salute. And they had, yes, I did a whole documentary on this. You can look this up. This is still verifiable right now. The Nazi salute was the original salute to their flag. That's how you know that they were nativists. That's how nativist is another way of saying foreigner, immigrant, coming together based off of, the only separation was based off of their religious belief. And this is when I exposed the Native American Party. Native American, that's where that term first came in. Native American Party. Those were nativists. Nothing but foreigners. I'm talking about full-fledged foreigners. Immigrants coming over here trying to fight for a right that they didn't have on a territory that wasn't theirs to begin with. If you look back, Thomas Jefferson, I'm talking about, Sister Becky, pull this up. Democrat Republican Party. Thomas Jefferson was exposing a whole lot of stuff at that time with the American political party. They call it, I remember they call it at the Jeffersonian or something. They call it the Jefferson Republican Party as a nickname, but the original name was the Democratic Republican Party.
Oh my goodness, you're right. I got it up here.
Started it. Thomas Jefferson started it. Thomas Jefferson's objective was to expose that it was a group of people set as nativists to come in and attach themselves to the indigenous people to make it seem like that they were cool when they weren't. The entire time they were for the people, to more foreigners to come over here. Look, let's take this land, federalize it, and make it ours. But when you look up, I'm talking about, look up the Democratic Republican Party. Their history stretches way back. Like, we talking about the 1700s.
It's Dane.
They've been
Calloway.
out here for that. Matter of fact, they started in DC. They've been out. They were the longest running party of even during the Continental Congress. They were the longest run. I mean, I believe they stopped at like 1830 something. I can't remember the time. But that's when they separated. But at that time, you had the Whigs. Remember the Whigs? Okay.
Yeah, up in Boston.
Okay, now they weren't as large as this group. Okay, but they came from this group. The Democrats, the Republicans, the Whigs, all of them came from here, from the Democratic Republican Party. That's where they started at. And Thomas Jefferson was warning people then. And I put this out there. I tried to show people, like, listen, this whole entire time, these people were working together. At one point, they only differentiated or had a disagreement and differentiated themselves from other people based off of their religious practice. That's it. The Catholics went one way, the Masons went another. That was it. I'm trying to tell you, if you look this up right now, when we say Democrat, Republican right now, still to this very day, they are the exact same people. Still to this very day.
Oh my goodness.
The government is set up on a Protestant way of life. No, this is fact. That's why I'm daring you to look this up. Everything that I'm saying
I'm looking it up. I got it up. I just did a quick Google. It says Democratic
Republican Party, like 1790 something, right? It started in the 1700s. Look, I'm trying to tell you. It started in the 1790 something. I can't recall it right off, but it went all the way up. And this is the reason why the Civil War happened. Okay, you see it now, right? And the Civil War happened.
I'm doing a share screen.
And when I was trying to tell people then, when I did my, all of this had to do with the, I know I'm jumping because I got excited. All of this had to deal with the flags at that time because they were trying to stamp their flag. Okay, say, okay, this is our territory too. Y'all need to share some of it with us. But the problem was that our flag was what they called the rebel flag. We were rebelling against who? Rebelling against foreigners. It was 61 documented wars in the 1800s. 61. Now, they're not including the ones that they lost. They're only going to say 61 documented wars in the 1800s because those are the wars that they were deemed that they won. Not meaning that they won by battle, they won by compromise. That's why they were able to take over territories. Anytime you hear territory being taken over, it was a compromise, not a war.
Okay.
For example, how they got Kentucky, right? Or how they got any one of them, the Carolinas, how they separated the Carolinas. That was all one landmass, South and North. That was never called South and North Carolina. That was Carolina.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Now that's an indigenous name. Tennessee is an indigenous name.
Right.
Memphis is an indigenous name.
Connecticut, Kentucky is indigenous name.
Okay, now
Connecticut.
The only indigenous names that weren't here were Maryland and Virginia. But that's going back to their religious belief. Who the British were believing in at that time was the Virgin Mary. Virgin Mary, Virginia Mary, Maryland. I'm from DC, so we saying Maryland. But it's Maryland, Virgin Mary. In fact, when they got here, all of this territory was called Virginia by the British government. From Florida all the way up to where you at was called, and I showed everybody the map. And now this is the British government trying to lay their landmark. Say, okay, this is our territory now. We're trying to take this over. But they couldn't take it over by way of war because it was too many of us. So they did it by way of paperwork. And created their own flag. Their flag is that red, white, and blue that everybody's saluting to on the 4th of July. Keep in mind, who did they get their independence from if they still the British government? They got their independence from the British? How? When it is the British government.
Oh my goodness. You know,
who they get their independence from? I'm talking about every July. We celebrating the same holiday. Who did they get their independence from? This was the British. This used to be called what? British America. Let's go back. Okay.
Yes.
Now they said they signed a peace treaty with the French and the Spanish, right? In order for them to take over this side, which was the east side. They didn't have California and the rest of that. Shit, they didn't even have Texas at that time.
Right.
They had all of the East Coast, South and North part of East Coast, all the East. They called this the East. They called this the British America. When you look at it, look at British's flag and look at America's flag. Do you know there was such thing as called, you can look this up. It was called the British American flag.
Yes.
Also, the Franco-American flag.
Yep.
Also,
I remember that. All this is coming back from when I was little. Yeah.
Now,
You're
I'm
right.
glad somebody said Louisiana Purchase. If you look everything up, they weren't making deals by way of money, because what money did they use back then? When currency
We didn't have a fiat. We didn't have a fiat.
All right, now, so back up. So that's a promissory note that they made, just like the credit debit system. That's what they learned. They learned to make promises with people. Look, if you give this territory, I'm telling you,
yeah, everything was pretty much done by a handshake
and written format. All those treaties were not signed that they did with us. The treaties was about land grabbing, and they backed up on their word. They straight up said, okay, this was going to happen, and it never happened. That was anytime a compromise happened, an agreement happened.
Facts.
When you land grabbing, you snatching land from people saying, okay, well, we gonna give you this certain section. We gonna keep this certain section. Y'all live here, and we'll live here. The problem was that they took it all. Because what they did was they created their own government, copied off of the Iroquois Confederacy, created their own government, marked it, and said, all right, this is what we gonna do. We gonna stay in DC. We're gonna put Maryland and Virginia together and create our own little territory and call it the city of Washington. Okay? And make sure that nobody owns that estate, that everybody else will be able to claim their own estate, be able to claim their own landmark. You be able to go ahead and make a promise.
Yep.
So the people of that land, mainly chiefs, go into business with them and say, you gonna get this, you gonna get that, as long as we get this or we get that. Come to find out, we know that they didn't hold up to their end of the bargain. Promises were not kept. That's why I have endless amounts of treaties not being signed. They tell you who the chiefs are, but you don't see their signature. And you know what they did? They came out with this thing called an X mark. Remember I talked about this too?
Yep.
The people that verified with the colonizer, so-called colonizer, it was basically squatters, but I'm gonna get to it, that the chief said, okay, you can stay here, and the signature on the agreement that they made, the compromise that they made, was an X mark. But that could be plagiarized, right? That's correct. Easy to create an X mark. You can create the agreement right now and write the X mark right now. And then you could turn around and tell somebody that, oh yeah, that person agreed, here go their X mark. That's how they were signing the treaties back then. It wasn't no signature, writing, cursive writing, wasn't none of that.
Terrible.
So not only did they change our minds with this territory, at the same time said, all right, we're gonna teach them that this flag is bad. It has something to do with the KKK. The KKK never flew the Confederate flag. The only people that flew the Confederate flag were those that fought in the Confederate War on the Confederate side. And guess who that was? The entire Union Army went with the Confederate. And I did a whole segment on this. The entire Union Army went with the Confederate. The people that we were fighting during the Civil War were immigrants.
Wow.
Look this up, because whatchamacallit, what's his name, Abraham Lincoln, went to Congress like, yo, y'all need to start sending some people too. We losing people. He asked for, I believe the number, don't quote me on this, I believe the number was 73,000. That's why they had to open up the borders to send more people in. They made promises with them and say, look, we're going to give you food, we're going to give you shelter, we're going to give you this land, that land. That's like why all the land allotments went to them in order for them to fight in this war. So he sent them on a dummy mission. He basically sent them on a suicide mission to go up against a real army, because the people that they were recruiting were not army.
We're not trained.
They were not trained. This is all documented.
Yes, and you did a segment on that.
Yes,
I remember.
This is how you know that they lied about the Civil War. Hands down, bruh.
Oh my goodness.
This is the reason why they trying to add in California and all the rest of these states that ain't had nothing to do with the East. Right now, California, remember when Governor Newsom was talking about something, he gonna try to get reparations for people what part of that? I forgot what part of California. I'm trying to think of the name. But he lied. You know why? Because there wasn't no slavery happening over there.
Man,
none. Man. Because look, who was in control of California? Real talk. Who was in control of California? The British government never had California.
No, they didn't. We know what their states are, all the colonial states.
I'm trying to tell you, when you look up, it was only 13 states at the time.
13. Oh, well, let's put it in the right perspective. 13 plantations.
13.
Because they didn't have the whole entire state. There were still Indians living within the boundaries of the areas that they were given.
And you correct. And they tried to add in the stories that California was there helping them. No, they were not. You know, Texas would have killed California. They had to come across Texas to get to where y'all was at to help y'all out. Texas ain't having that. You tripping. Texas is big as hell. And so is Cali, but you matter of fact, Cali would have died right then and there at Texas if that was the case. They wouldn't have made it past. The Civil War was a compromise. That's what it was about, because all of the South had all of the plantations, like how you just named, the plantations had nothing to do with what they may think it is. That's all about the territory where they were farming. So they had the majority of the resources. So the North needed the South. So they compromised. Like, look, okay, whatever y'all want, we gonna give y'all. But look, let's just implement this thing called taxes, okay? So we can tax y'all on maybe not the land, but let me tax y'all because y'all, having employees. Can we get a piece of that? Here, we'll make sure that you get into your own state. Implement taxes. Come on. And then later on down the line, they changed the currency all over again. Go ahead, because I'll be here for a whole half an hour talking about this.
Set it on I don't care. I want to hear it because I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why are we Democrats? Martin Luther King was a Republican.
No, he wasn't. No, ma'am.
Abraham Lincoln was a Republican.
Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. Martin Luther King was a Democrat. Martin Luther King was set to make Democrats. Yes, ma'am. Martin Luther King was a Democrat, hands down. He was not a Republican.
Take notes.
Martin Luther King was a Democrat. They gon'
now you really freaking me out.
They gonna claim that he this, he that, he was for the Republicans. No, he was not. He was working with the Democrats. Him, Abernathy was promoting the Democrat Party and all that. They were pushing everybody to go to the Democrat Party. Don't forget that Malcolm X was the one to tell y'all. He was telling y'all not to go to the Democrat Party. Martin Luther King was like, no, go Democrat. But no, Martin Luther King was not a Republican. I'm talking about, we have his records though. We have that he signed up to be a Democrat.
It's up.
He signed up to be a Democrat a long time ago. So I can prove that. I can prove that he was a Democrat.
They're saying the official answer is neither. King talked very infrequently about his personal politics and was not formally affiliated with either political.
That's cap. He was affiliated with the Democrats. That's cap. He was a Democrat, hands down. He was a Democrat. And Malcolm X warned everybody, look, they putting people in front of y'all, straight up, I'm paraphrasing, who are Democrat. And he said Dixiecrat. Actually, that's what the term that he was using. The Dixiecrats ain't got nothing to do with us as far as helping us. But they were all about separation as far as the Dixiecrats are concerned. Here's another thing. At that time, they were trying to switch Martin Luther King's his campaign from Freedom Now to Black Power. At that same time, Black Power was inserted. So that was what's his name? The dude from Jamaica. Stokely Carmichael. Stokely Carmichael was a Democrat as well. Matter of fact, every immigrant that came over here became a Democrat. Every immigrant. That's number one. Number two, when you come over here as a Democrat, you have to campaign for the Democrats. The original Black Panther Party was trying to associate themselves with the Dixiecrats, and they did. The original Black Panther Party, not Huey P. Newton, not that one. I'm talking about Stokely Carmichael's. He was the first that started the Black Panther Party. When I did my segment on that, yes, that was all Democrats, every single one of them. They even tried to bring that lady from Mississippi into it. That was actually in the field. What's her name? Fannie Lou Hamer. They tried to bring her on board so she could be the mouthpiece. They put her in front of the Congress and all that, tried to pretend like she was representing everybody that was, behind her, meaning, the Black Panther Party and all the rest of them, NAACP, all of them, even Martin Luther King's movement. But Fannie Lou Hamer was actually in them fields for real. And what they didn't listen to was Fannie Lou Hamer was telling her story and it was real deep, and it was so deep, and it was being broadcasted on the television, on live television. They cut her off.
Right.
Immediately, the president, who was that? Lyndon B. Johnson jumped on television. You know how they do. Anytime the president do something, they gotta flip it to them. Okay, wait a minute. He giving a speech about somebody's birthday or some shit like that. It was something fluke, so he could turn the attention off of her. Because yes, this is all documented. She was giving her backstory about what happened. She also exposed that she was on her plantation with her family. I'm talking about her husband and their children.
Right.
No,
correct.
They said the family was separated. They lying.
Correct.
I'm just saying.
I thought I wasn't losing my mind, Dane. It was Martin Luther King's father. It was Martin Luther King's father who was a Republican.
I believe so, if I'm not mistaken. It
was here it is right here. I knew I wasn't losing my mind, but he swung in. Here it is. Although King Sr. had previously opposed John Kennedy because he was a Catholic, he expressed his appreciation for these causes and switched his support to Kennedy. Until this time, King Sr. had been a lifelong registered Republican and had endorsed Republican Richard Nixon before switching to endorse Kennedy. I knew I wasn't losing my mind, so I had it twisted. It was his father, it was his parents that were the Republicans.
Martin Luther King Jr. was definitely a Democrat.
Right. You're correct.
His record.
That was his dad.
So Dane, let me ask. So going back to the, I guess, Civil War type of time, you know how like in the North, the demographics, and I'm gonna just go white and black because that's what we think of today. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't. But I want to know what type of people were down south, because up north in Boston, you have, that was Irish. In New York, there's areas where it was all Italians. Like when we're thinking about the South, what was the makeup of the type of white people that were down there?
Germans.
All?
It was mainly Germans down south.
Because you don't see
Germans
that.
And Russians and. What's the name of that? No, not Siberian. What's the name of that group? And it start with an S. I forgot the name of that. But yeah, it was mainly German, because you had uptown. I mean, I'm from DC. We called New York and them uptown. Y'all did have some Germans, but y'all mainly had the so-called Jews, the Italians.
Yep.
Y'all had the Welsh. Y'all had the
Irish.
Yeah, y'all had the Irish for sure. And I believe, y'all had a bunch. Y'all had more people because of where they came from. They left the light on for those people to come through by way of the Statue of Liberty being a lighthouse back then.
And then was Charleston what that was? Was Charleston kind of the port that they came through?
Who? The white folks?
Down south, yeah. Like almost Charleston was the port, like Statue of Liberty was up north.
Yes, Statue of Liberty. Correction. Charleston, South Carolina was a port. Hands down, where a lot of those people, in fact, the majority,
because we were already there. Like my people,
yeah, we were already there. No, we were there.
And so my people are like an hour and a half. They're in Sumter, but they had what I found out is they had like 89 acres of land, and we still have 27 to my name. So I'm like going back and there's documents about it. So if they have all that land right up north. In Charleston, was it black people when they came in, or that was just like an area where we just went and relaxed by the water, and then we went up to where we were?
What you're gonna see is Charleston, South Carolina, who was coming through that port mainly were people of West Indian descent. The West Indians mainly were coming through Charleston, South Carolina, and then moved north. Like that's why you see a lot of West Indians, and for example, in New York, but that was Manhattan. Before they start switching all the names, that was New Amsterdam. They called that the New Amsterdam for that reason, because it was mainly all those, white folks coming in at that time. And then Harlem was their port. And then Ellis Island, that was another.
Ellis Island was huge. Everybody came into Ellis Island.
There was nothing but foreigners coming through. Yeah. Like, for example, in Godfather, the movie, his folks came from Sicily or something like that, if I'm not, or close to Sicily, and that's Italy, right? Basically Spaniards.
Yep.
to summarize it. But as a young Corleone, when he was coming through, they showed how he was a young boy, and he came to America. If y'all pay attention to that movie, I forgot which part that was. That could have been part 1, part 2, something like that. But that happened for a lot of them, though. A lot of them. But I see people saying Sicily, and that's what it's a slop something. It's a different one that I'm referring to that start with an S. Slovenia. Is that what I'm saying? Slovenia, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. They were down south as Slovenia. Well. I believe that's what. Yeah, they were down south. Matter of fact, they look like they Russian. The majority of the people that were down
Slovenia,
south,
the Slavs.
Slovenia, the Slavs, the Slovenians, the Russians, the Ukrainians. Them two, and somebody else. What did I say? Russian. Who I missed?
Well, don't leave out them coming through Canada, because
they came through Canada. No, I'm not leaving that out. But he asked who was down south with us.
Oh, down south.
Yeah,
okay.
They was down south with us.
But they didn't come until way later, though, right, Dane?
Yeah, they in large mass. Yeah, they came in large mass way later. Yeah, but it was mainly, it wasn't that many of them down south with us. Keep in mind, that's when they were considering it the Negro problem in the 1800s, and they were trying to move the majority of our people to the west coast of Africa.
Oh, yeah.
That's the transatlantic slave trade right there.
Yeah. That's why I said it's mind-boggling to me when they say, "Oh, you're from Africa." I'm like, well, wait a minute. This part of Africa was created after my grandmother was born. So how is she from there? How are our people from there? It makes no sense.
No, our people not from there.
I know. I'm like, how is that possible? The people that you see in Monrovia and Sierra Leone, they are American. They are our people. Because they went there. They left to go there and cultivate that land with the British. Correct? They went there to cultivate that land and start a world. Yeah. Wow. Those are our brothers and sisters over there. It's up. Still to this day. We were all lied to. When Trump came in office, that's when I felt like I had a real life. Okay, so what did Trump say that made you investigate the Democrats to see that it was the Democrats that started the KKK? Everything he said. Well, let's start here about the Obamacare. That I knew was affecting people. It didn't matter what your race is. That Obamacare thing, the premiums were low, but they did not tell the people what the ramifications were. They would have very low premiums, but when it comes to paying up. But you didn't need that. No, I didn't. I was worrying about the elderly people. Okay. They were complaining about the Obamacare and how they have to probably get out and work now so that they can make those payments. Yeah. They were complaining, and I'm like, I really thought this was something that was going to help the elderly and everybody that, could not afford insurance. And elderly were complaining. They're like, oh my goodness, I can't afford this. So now you see all this huge flux of elderlies applying for jobs in the grocery store. I've never seen so many senior citizens working as cashiers in the grocery store for when Obamacare came in here in the North. And I'm like, they should be retired. And they're already bending over. They gave them easy jobs to do, like bringing the carriages back in the store. But I'm like, I don't want to see my grandparent suffering like that just so that they could meet the criteria for this Obamacare. And then we've seen this huge flux of elderly divorcing their elderly husbands so that they could qualify for Medicaid benefits. It was terrible. Because together they didn't qualify for a certain amount. So they have divorced each other so that they could qualify for certain Medicaid benefits. And I'm like, that is so sad. Crazy. People that were married for 60 years, they had to do a divorce so that they could qualify for specific Medicaid benefits. Could you imagine? That's traumatizing. That is. And I'm like, and this is the Democrats.
I'm just here to make you think.
Slow down.
Yeah. Sub up, like up.